2 seconds after the crash, everything went black. I'm Marion Hayes, 33, a nurse from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. When I opened my eyes, I was in the ICU tubes in my arms, bandages across my chest, every breath a sharp stab. The car had come out of nowhere, and now here I was, broken, but alive. My first thought was my family. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and typed into our group chat, "I'm in the ICU, please pray." I waited, staring at the screen, expecting calls, texts, anything. Hours passed. Then a notification. My parents sent a photo, smiling on a Miami Beach, cocktails in hand. "Having the time of our lives," the caption read. My heart sank. No one called. No one came. I lay there alone, the hospital's hum my only company. I'd always been the one to fix things, bailing them out, keeping the peace. And now when I needed them most, they were sipping margaritas. Days later, my phone lit up with 39 missed calls along with a message pickup. "Your parents are in big trouble." I just replied, "Please pray." Back then. And now I want to ask you, if it were you, after everything, would you forgive them? Leave a comment. I truly want to hear your answer. When I woke up in the ICU, the pain was the second thing I noticed. The first was the silence, no family, no voices, just the steady beep of machines. 3 days had passed since the crash, and my body was a map of bruises and broken bones. Every breath felt like a knife twisting in my ribs. I lay there, bandaged, staring at the ceiling, trying to focus on anything but the ache. The nurses were kind, checking my IV, adjusting my pillows, but their pitying smiles only deepened the loneliness. I kept my phone close, hoping for a message, a call, anything from my family. Nothing came. I opened our group chat, scrolling past my plea, "I'm in the ICU, please pray," and saw the same photo from my parents lounging on a Miami beach, their grins mocking my pain. I closed my eyes and memories flooded in. For years, I'd been the one holding things together. My parents leaned on me to cover their rent, $500 a month, wired straight to their landlord in Baton Rouge. I remembered the call from their landlord 2 years ago, threatening eviction. I'd stayed up late, juggling my nurse's salary to make it work, sending the money without a second thought. They'd promised to pay me back, but the checks never came. My sister was worse. She'd racked up $3,000 in credit card debt, late-night bar tabs, shopping sprees, you name it. I bailed her out, driving to her apartment with a check, watching her shrug like it was no big deal. I thought that's what family did, step up, no questions asked. But now, in this sterile room with tubes in my arms and no one at my bedside, I started to wonder, was I just their fixer, their ATM? I grabbed my phone again, desperate for a sign they cared. The screen glowed with notifications, work emails, a bill reminder, that same Miami photo pinned at the top of the chat. My cousin sent a vague, "get well" text, but no one else bothered. I set the phone down, my hands shaking, not from pain, but from a creeping realization. I'd spent years pouring myself into them, and they couldn't even show up. The nurses changed shifts, their footsteps fading down the hall. I stared at the group chat. My words, "please, pray," unanswered, like a scream into a void. That's when it hit me, maybe I wasn't the glue holding us together. Maybe I was the one trapped. I tried to shift in bed, wincing as my ribs protested. The pain wasn't just physical anymore. It was the weight of years spent fixing their messes. I thought of my parents' house, a modest 2-bedroom, the one I'd kept afloat. I pictured my sister carefree, her debt erased because I stepped in. And for what? For them to sip cocktails in Miami while I fought to breathe. I wasn't angry, not yet. It was something colder, sharper, like a blade taking shape. I'd been their safety net, but lying here alone, I questioned why. Last year, my sister called me in tears, her car about to be repossessed. I sent the money, stayed on the phone until she stopped sobbing. My parents, too, every month I'd get a text. "Can you cover rent again?" I always did. Now those texts felt like anchors. The nurse came in, her name tag reading Clara. "You need anything, hon?" she asked, her voice soft. I shook my head, too tired to speak. She adjusted my blanket, checked the monitor, and left the door clicking shut. I picked up my phone again, thumb hovering over the chat. I wanted to type something to make them see me, but I didn't. Instead, I scrolled through old messages, sent the rent, paid the bill, got you covered. Each one felt heavier, a reminder of how much I'd given. I set the phone face down. For the first time, I wondered if I'd been wrong about what family meant. Was this really who they were? People who took and took, then left me here. The thought settled in cold and clear, and I knew something had to change. By day 10, I could sit up without passing out. The ICU felt less like a prison now, though the bandages still clung to my ribs and every move sent a dull ache through my bones. I was getting stronger, but the emptiness lingered. That morning, my phone buzzed. Not the group chat, but my husband calling from Texas. William's voice crackled through, steady but tired from his engineering job. "You holding up okay?" he asked. I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me, and mumbled something about the pain easing. He promised to wrap up his project and fly back soon, but the distance between us felt wider than the miles. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at the ceiling, wondering why his call didn't fill the void. Around noon, my friend walked in, a paper bag in hand. Vivian, a fellow nurse at the hospital, had a smile that could cut through any gloom. She set the bag on the tray table, homemade gumbo, still warm, and a slice of pecan pie from her mom's recipe. "You need real food? Not this hospital slop," she said, pulling up a chair. We talked for hours, her stories about work and her new puppy pulling me out of my head. She didn't ask about my family, but her presence screamed what they lacked. Vivian stayed until the nurses shooed her out, leaving me with a full stomach and a flicker of warmth I hadn't felt in days. I checked my phone after she left, hoping for something, anything from my family. The group chat was dead. My "please pray" message still unanswered. My cousin had sent another text, a bland, "Hope you're better," like he was checking a box. My parents. Nothing. My sister silent. I scrolled through the chat, their absence louder than any words. I'd given them so much, years of bailing them out, keeping their lives afloat. And now, when I was the one breaking, they couldn't even send a real message. Vivian's visit stuck with me. Over the next few hours, her words kept looping in my head. "You've got to put yourself first." "Marion," she'd said, her voice firm but kind. "You can't keep carrying everyone else." She told me about her own family, how she'd learned to set boundaries after years of being their go-to fixer. Her mom had leaned on her for years, calling at all hours for help with bills or drama. Vivian finally said no, and it changed everything. "You're not their crutch," she said, squeezing my hand. "You're allowed to heal." Her story hit hard, like a mirror held up to my life. I'd been carrying my parents and my sister for so long I didn't know how to stop. But lying there with no one but nurses and Vivian showing up, I saw it clearly. Their silence wasn't just neglect. It was a choice. I tried to distract myself, flipping through a magazine Vivian left behind. The pages blurred, my mind stuck on her advice. Put myself first. The idea felt foreign, almost wrong. I'd always been the one to step in to fix things, but what had it gotten me? A hospital bed, a phone full of nothing, and parents who'd rather post beach selfies than check on their daughter. I thought of my sister, how I'd wiped her slate clean only for her to vanish now. My cousin's half-hearted text felt like a slap, a reminder that I was an afterthought. Vivian's words grew louder. "You're allowed to heal." For the first time, I wondered if healing meant letting go, not just of the pain in my ribs, but of them. The nurse came in to check my vitals, her hands quick and gentle. "You're looking stronger," she said, jotting something on my chart. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. Vivian's visit had cracked something open. My family's silence wasn't just absence, it was proof of who they were. I set the magazine down, my hands steadier than they'd been in days. I didn't need their texts or their visits to tell me my worth. Vivian had shown up not because I'd paid her debts or fixed her problems, but because she cared. That was the difference. And maybe it was time I started caring about myself too. On day 14, my phone lit up with 39 missed calls. I was propped up in my ICU bed, the bandages still tight around my ribs when the screen started flashing. My parents, Marvin and Mabel, had called over and over, their names stacking up like a ledger of demands. I let each call slip to voicemail, my thumb frozen over the screen. After days of their silence, I wasn't ready to hear their voices, not when they'd left me alone in this hospital bed. Then my cousin Bryce called, his name blinking as I set the phone down. I sighed, expecting another empty get well text. But when I answered, his voice was sharp, almost panicked. "Marion, it's bad," he said. "Marvin and Mabel are being sued. It's Joanne, she's caught up in a financial scam at the bank." Bryce's words hit like a jolt. Joanne, my sister, had always been reckless, bouncing checks, maxing out credit cards, but this was a new low. He explained how she'd been skimming thousands from client accounts at the bank where she worked, funneling it to cover her own debts. She'd siphoned nearly $10,000, forging signatures to hide her tracks. When the bank caught on, they filed a lawsuit, and Marvin and Mabel were dragged in because they'd co-signed a shady loan for her, thinking it was legit. "They're freaking out," Bryce said, his voice tight. "They need your help, Marion. You've always fixed things." I stared at the IV dripping into my arm, my mind spinning. Fix things. I'd been their cleanup crew for years, paying their rent, clearing Joanne's debts, keeping their lives from collapsing. And now, while I was fighting to move without pain, they wanted me to dive into their mess again. I ended the call with Bryce promising nothing. My phone buzzed again, another voicemail from Mabel, her voice cracking as she begged me to call back. "Marion, we're in trouble," she said, her words rushed. "You've got to help us." Marvin's message followed, gruff and urgent. "This is serious, Marion. Call me." I didn't listen to the rest. Instead, I opened the group chat, my fingers steady as I typed 2 words to my parents. "Please pray." I hit send and locked the screen. Those words weren't a plea. They were a mirror throwing their neglect back at them. I'd said it when I needed them, and they'd ignored me. Now it was my turn. I wasn't going to pick up their pieces this time. The nurse came in, her hands quick as she checked my chart. "You okay?" she asked, noticing my clenched jaw. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She adjusted my pillow and left the door clicking shut. I leaned back, Bryce's words echoing. Joanne's scam wasn't just her mess, it was theirs too. Marvin and Mabel had enabled her signing papers without a second thought, and now they expected me to swoop in. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up crunching numbers to keep their house afloat, $500 a month wired without fail. When Joanne's car was nearly repossessed, I'd driven across town with a check, no questions asked. Every crisis, every call I'd answered. And where were they when I needed them? Sipping cocktails in Miami, not even a text to check on me. The phone buzzed again, another text from Bryce. "Marion. They're desperate. Please." I set it face down. For years, I'd been their safety net, the one they called when things fell apart. I remembered Marvin's voice years ago when he lost his job. "Just this once, Marion. It was never once." Joanne's tears when her credit card was cut off, "I'll pay you back." She never did. I'd poured myself into their problems thinking it made us family. But now, with 39 missed calls and a lawsuit hanging over them, I saw it clearly. They didn't need me. They needed my wallet. The spark inside me grew, not anger, but resolve, sharp and unyielding. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I shifted in bed, the ache in my ribs fading against this new feeling. Freedom. It was small, fragile, but real. I'd spent years tethered to their chaos, their demands, their endless needs. But here, in this sterile room, with no one but nurses checking on me, I felt it a chance to let go. I didn't owe them my strength, my money, my life. "Please pray" I'd written, and I meant it, not for me, but for them to face their own consequences. I closed my eyes, not to escape, but to hold on to that flicker of freedom. The next morning, a small gift box showed up at the ICU desk. The nurse handed it to me, her voice casual as she said it came from Mabel. I turned it over, the plain wrapping crinkling under my fingers. No note, no card, no apology, just a box, like a half-hearted gesture meant to fill the silence of her absence. I set it unopened on the tray table, my ribs still tender, but my mind clear. Mabel's gift didn't erase the weeks of her silence, the voicemails begging for help only when she was desperate. It was too late for tokens, too late for anything but the truth. She hadn't been there when I needed her, and I wasn't going to let her back in now. I grabbed my phone not to check the group chat, but to open my banking app. My fingers moved with purpose, pulling up the recurring transfer, $500 a month, wired to Marvin and Mabel's landlord for years. I'd set it up after their panicked call about eviction, a reflex to keep their lives from falling apart. Every month, I'd watched my account shrink, telling myself it was what family did. But now, staring at the screen, I saw it for what it was, a chain I'd forged myself. I tapped cancel, confirmed it, and watched the transaction vanish. A wave of relief crashed over me, lighter than I'd ever felt. For years, I'd carried their weight, rent, debts, crises. Now, I was free. I leaned back in bed, the bandages less suffocating, and let that lightness sink in. I wasn't their anchor anymore. Vivian came by that afternoon, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a 12-hour shift. She dropped into the chair beside me, her eyes flicking to the unopened gift box. "Mabel," she asked, her eyebrow arched. I nodded, and she snorted softly. "You don't owe her a thing, Marion," she said, her voice firm but warm. "Focus on you." She leaned forward, her tone brightening. "You know there's a hospital in Shreveport hiring nurses. Better pay, smaller team, new start." She painted a picture of Shreveport, a quieter city with a riverfront, new clinics, and a chance to leave Baton Rouge's chaos behind. She'd heard about the job from a friend who'd moved there, said the hospital was desperate for experienced nurses like us. "You could walk away from all this," she said, gesturing at the gift box, the hospital room, the weight of my family. Her words lit a spark. Shreveport, a new city, a new job, a life not tethered to Mabel's demands or Joanne's scams. I'd never considered leaving Baton Rouge, my job, my routine, my roots were here. But what were those roots? A family that only called when they needed money. A sister who'd dragged us into a lawsuit. Vivian kept talking, describing Shreveport's neighborhoods, tree-lined streets, affordable apartments, a community that felt alive. "You're stronger than you think," she said, her hand resting on mine. "You've carried them too long. It's time to carry yourself." She told me about her own move years ago, how leaving her hometown had given her space to breathe, to build a life not defined by her family's endless needs. Her story felt like a roadmap guiding me towards something I hadn't dared imagine. I spent the rest of the day thinking about Shreveport. I pulled up my phone not to check messages but to search for apartments. 1-bedrooms with small balconies, nothing fancy but mine. I pictured a place where I could wake up without a text from Marvin begging for rent, without Mabel's voicemails demanding I fix their latest crisis. I thought of Vivian's life, her apartment, her puppy, her freedom. Canceling that transfer had been the first step. Now I was ready to take another. I grabbed a notepad from the bedside table and started jotting down plans, hospitals to email, moving companies to call, a rough budget for the move. Shreveport wasn't just a city, it was a chance to start over, to build something for myself. The nurse came in, her hands quick as she checked my chart. "You seem different today," she said, a small smile breaking through. I nodded, not explaining. It wasn't just the canceled payment or Mabel's gift, it was the decision taking shape. Shreveport was my way out, my chance to leave behind the family that had taken me for granted. Vivian's words had cut through the fog, showing me what I could have. Mabel's gift sat untouched, a symbol of what I was leaving behind. I didn't need her gestures or her approval. That night my phone rang, and the screen lit up with the words, "My grandmother, a rare comfort in the cold routine of the ICU." I shifted my pillows, the bandages around my ribs looser now, and answered. Bessie's voice came through steady but laced with worry. Marion, are you feeling any better? Have you been able to eat? Are the nurses taking good care of you? My throat tightened and I managed only a few short replies. Then she paused, drawing in a long breath, her tone turning heavy as if carrying a secret she'd held for years. Marion, she said, there's something I need to make clear. I've decided to leave you my house and my savings. Your family is ungrateful. They don't deserve it. Bessie explained how she had watched Marvin and Mabel lean on me for years, draining my money, my time, my strength, without a trace of gratitude. You've cared for them and for me when no one else did, she said firmly. This is yours, and I've already told your parents they know my decision. I gripped the phone, stunned, her words striking like a lifeline I hadn't known I needed. Bessie's little two-bedroom house in the country with the porch she loved, and her savings were more than an inheritance. They were her trust in me, a validation of everything I had carried. Before I could recover, my phone buzzed again and again. The group chat exploded. Marvin's message blared in all caps. You cut off our monthly support, and now you're taking Bessie's money too. Mabel's text was a mix of reproach and pleading. Marion, how could you turn your back on your own family? Cutting the rent money was already cruel, but now you've made Bessie abandon us. Their accusations stacked up on the screen, but my hand stayed steady. For the first time, I saw the truth. They weren't angry about Bessie's choice. They were furious that the chain they'd tied me with for years was finally breaking. I set the phone down, my hand steady. I wasn't going to dive into their fight. I'd spent years cleaning up their messes, rent payments, crises, excuses, but this wasn't my battle anymore. Instead, I turned my focus to Shreveport. I'd spent the day emailing hospitals, one already requesting my resume, and a follow-up call next week. My notepad was filled with plans, apartment listings with small balconies, quotes from moving companies, a timeline to be out of Baton Rouge by next month. Bessie's call sharpened my resolve. Her house wasn't just a gift, it was a foundation for a new life. I pictured myself there, sanding down the creaky porch, planting a garden with herbs and flowers, living without the constant pull of Marvin and Mabel's demands. For years, I'd been their fixer, sending money for their mortgage, answering every desperate call. But Bessie saw me, not what I could do for her. Her trust felt like permission to keep going, to choose myself over their chaos. Later that evening, William called from Texas, his voice brighter than it had been in weeks. I got a job offer in Shreveport, he said, excitement breaking through. His company was opening a new site there, needing engineers to oversee construction of a processing plant. We could make it work, Marion. Together. I smiled, warmth spreading through me, the first real smile in weeks. William's move to Shreveport wasn't just a coincidence, it was a sign. We talked about logistics. He'd finish his project in Houston, move in a month, and we'd find a place together. I shared Bessie's decision, leaving out Marvin and Mabel's tantrum in the group chat. He didn't need to know they weren't part of this new chapter. We'll figure it out, he said, and I believed him. For the first time, I felt we were building something together, not just me holding everything up. The nurse came in, prepping me for discharge the next day. You're almost out of here, she said, her smile warm as she checked my chart. I nodded, my mind already in Shreveport. The group chat kept buzzing with Marvin and Mabel's accusations, but I didn't open it. Bessie's voice echoed in my head, her decision final. She'd given me more than a house or money, she'd given me a way out. I added to my notepad, contact a realtor to assess Bessie's house, research nursing certifications in Shreveport, plan a visit to see apartments. The ICU, once a cage, now felt like a launch pad. I wasn't running from Marvin and Mabel, I was stepping into a life they couldn't touch. I closed my notepad, the future clearer than ever, a new city waiting for me to claim it. 3 days before my discharge, I signed the papers for Shreveport. The hospital room was quiet. My bags packed as I finalized the lease for a 1-bedroom apartment near the riverfront. I left Baton Rouge the next morning, the city shrinking in my rearview mirror as I drove north. Shreveport welcomed me with wide streets and a new job at a community hospital where I started as a nurse in the ER. The work was fast-paced, the staff tight-knit, and for the first time in years I felt like I was building something for myself. My apartment was small, but bright, with a balcony overlooking a quiet street. I unpacked my things, arranging books and dishes, claiming a space that was mine alone. A week later, I posted a photo on Facebook, a shot of my apartment's balcony at sunset, with a caption about my new job and fresh start. The likes poured in from colleagues and old friends, but then I saw the comments from Marvin and Mabel. Marvin wrote, "So you're just gonna leave us behind, selfish." Mabel's post was colder. "You got what you wanted, didn't you? Never cared about family." Their words stung, but I scrolled past expecting their bitterness. Then I saw Joanne's comment, sharp and public. "Enjoy your new life, Marion. You only think about yourself." Bryce chimed in, his tone less vicious but still accusing. "Guess you're too busy for us now." I stared at the screen, their words echoing the same entitlement I'd walked away from. I didn't reply. Engaging would only pull me back into their chaos, and I was done with that. Vivian came over that weekend, her laughter filling my apartment as she helped me hang curtains. She'd driven up from Baton Rouge to check on me, bringing a bottle of wine and stories from her own move years ago. "You're doing the right thing," she said, her voice steady as we sat on the balcony. "Don't let them drag you down." She told me about her neighbor, a baker named Clara, who hosted potlucks and insisted on introducing me. The next evening, Vivian dragged me to Clara's apartment down the hall, where I met a handful of neighbors, teachers, artists, a retired mechanic. They welcomed me with warm smiles and questions about my job, my life. Clara handed me a plate of homemade cookies, saying, "You're one of us now." For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere that wasn't defined by obligation. The hospital kept me busy, my shifts a whirlwind of patients and paperwork, but I thrived in it. I was learning the rhythms of Shreveport, its coffee shops, its riverwalk, its quiet evenings. Vivian texted daily, checking in, sending me names of local book clubs and yoga classes. She pushed me to join a hiking group, saying it'd help me settle in. I started to see a life taking shape, one where I wasn't Marvin and Mabel's fixer or Joanne's scapegoat. Their comments on Facebook faded into the background, just noise from a past I'd left behind. I didn't owe them explanations or apologies. I was here in Shreveport building something new, and that was enough. 6 weeks after we landed in Shreveport, the first letter arrived. It was from a lawyer forwarded through Bessie's estate, detailing Joanne's arrest for fraud. The charges had caught up with her years of scams, finally landing her in court. The same letter mentioned Marvin and Mabel, their house foreclosed, after drowning in legal debts from Joanne's mess. I read it at my kitchen table, the morning light spilling through the window, and felt no surprise, only a quiet confirmation. Their choices had built this outcome, not mine. I folded the letter away, my coffee cooling, and turned my focus to the life I was building here. William had settled into his engineering job, coming home with stories of the new plant and plans for our future. We'd moved into a larger apartment together, a cozy 2-bedroom with a view of the Red River. Our evenings were filled with small joys, cooking dinners, watching movies, planning a trip to the coast. Vivian was a constant presence, dropping by with takeout or dragging us to local festivals. She'd become my anchor in Shreveport, her laughter a reminder of what real support felt like. Clara, our neighbor, hosted weekly potlucks, her kitchen warm with the smell of fresh bread. I'd grown close to her and others in the building, Tom, the retired mechanic who fixed my bike, and Sarah, a teacher who invited me to her book club. This was my new circle, people who showed up without expecting anything in return. One afternoon, a second letter arrived, this one in Bessie's handwriting. I opened it carefully, sitting on my balcony, the river glinting below. Her words were clear, written with the same conviction I'd heard in her voice. "You were right to walk away, Marion. They took you for granted, but I saw you. Stay strong." She wrote about her own regrets, how she'd tried to hold the family together, but saw their selfishness too late. Her letter ended with a simple wish: build a life that makes you proud. I held the paper, tears pricking my eyes, not from sadness but from gratitude. Bessie's words were a final gift, a reminder that I'd chosen the right path. I thought about Marvin, Mabel, and Joanne, their lives unraveling in Baton Rouge. Their accusations calling me selfish, ungrateful had faded into the background. I didn't check their posts anymore, didn't read their messages. They were part of a past I'd outgrown. My real family was here. William planning our next adventure. Vivian pushing me to try new things. Clara leaving cookies at my door. They were the ones who showed up, who saw me for who I was, not what I could give. Shreveport had become more than a city, it was home, a place where I could breathe. I'd learned that family isn't just blood, it's the people who stand by you, who lift you up without pulling you down. That was the life I was building, and it was mine.